This is a solo game of Space Race. I'm playing as the Americans against two AI opponents, the Russians and the private sector. Now at the moment I'm in the lead, but not so far ahead to not pay attention to my opponents. You can see that they're already started developing their agencies. I also have something in my agency already, but they also have a lot of cards in their labs, and my lab is empty at the moment. Now that's unfortunate because at the end of this round the lab is going to be scored, so I have to think about getting some cards in the lab so I can score some points as well. Now furthermore, at the end of the round we'll also score the breakthroughs. You can see that I'm already dominating 3 stages with my white astronauts, while they're sharing a tie for 1. But the AI opponents are very active during the breakthrough stages. But the AI opponents are very active during the rounds in which breakthroughs are scored, so I have to think about that too, because this situation might change a lot. The round starts with the funding stage, which means that we'll all take 1 card. I'll take the card and put it in my hand, and they'll take the card and put it directly into their labs. Now in the opportunity stage I play the same way as in the multiplayer game, which means that I'll put cards from my hand into the unexplored universe. Now I want to start working on my lab, so I'll put the launch contract there. And the opponents play a little differently than in the multiplayer game. They'll just put 1 card from the top of the deck into the unexplored universe. Now I'll add 1 extra card as in the normal game. Now I'll shuffle these cards and reveal 2 of them just as a normal multiplayer game. Okay, 1, 2. And now, because I'll like to exploit the combo with the space program that I've just put into the unexplored universe, I'd probably choose the space program as my control card. Now the opponents also choose their control card as secret, but compared to the multiplayer game, this is easier. They just put the top card from their deck into their agency. Just like in the standard multiplayer game, we'll reveal the rest of the cards from the unexplored universe and put them into the universe according to their stages. And then we'll all reveal our control cards. So the Russians will play space programs, they'll compete with me, and this private sector will go for breakthroughs. Nobody plays propaganda or technology, so we can skip those stages. And we get to the space programs, and both me and the Russians clash there. Now, my control card level is 1, and there is 6, so they'll play first, and the opponent always takes the card that's on the right and put it into their agency. Now, if the launch contract was there, they would take that away from me, but I had to take the risk and play a level 1 space program card because of its additional ability that lets me build my lab. So I took the risk this time and it paid off. Now it's the beginning of my turn, and I play the same way as I would in a normal multiplayer game. So I can take 1 card from the space programs and put it into my agency. Now the launch contract has a very powerful ability. It allows me to place a space program card from my lab into my agency. Now my lab is at the moment empty, but what I can do is use the secondary ability of the space program control card and put 2 cards there. So let's put these 2. Now I activate the launch contract and put postcode into my agency. Now because this ability is on the right side of the card, it's only 1 time and I cover it up. Now I also have the Voskhod now, which allows me to activate this ability as well, so I can put 1 additional card from my hand into my lab. So I'll just put espionage there. During my round I've put 2 space programs cards into my agency, which means that I was able to fulfill the conditions of this project. Now that means that now I can discard one of my control cards and they won't be available for me in the future, which will limit my options a bit. That's bad, but I'll also score 6 points, and that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I was also able to put 3 cards into my lab, which means that I've also got half of the project Ice Swarm completed. On my way to perhaps complete it next round, so I can get even more points. Private sector can play the breakthrough stage, and the AI again always takes the card that's on the right. So they'll take this card and put it into their agency, and because it's a breakthrough card, they can place the corresponding astronaut into the breakthrough zone, which means that they'll now dominate in this one. And because no one is competing with them in the breakthrough stage, they also get 1 additional card from the deck into their lab. Now we move on to the bureaucracy stage. I play according to normal rules, so I can activate all my bureaucracy abilities now. Unfortunately, I don't have any that I can activate at the moment. The AI opponents do not use any of the bureaucracy abilities they have, but instead they are active if they are dedicated, which is the case of the private sector. What the private sector now can do is move one of their astronauts from the launch pad, which is the central zone in the breakthrough tracker, into another zone that will score them domination. It goes clockwise from here, but they won't go there because they're already dominating it. They won't go here because that wouldn't help them, but they can tie me in this zone, so they'll end up here. Now that the bureaucracy stage is over, we move on to the stage output, which I play according to normal multiplayer rules. Now, because I play the space program control card, I can score the purple levels in my agency. I have a total of 3 here, which means that I can move my rocket 3 points further on the progress tracker. 1, 2, 3. The opponents score the stage output as well, except they get double the amount of points. Now, the private sector played the breakthrough card, but they don't have any red levels in their agency, so they get 0. On the other hand, the Russians play the space program, and they already have some cards that boost their purple levels. They have 4 total, but because it's an AI, they get 8 points. Now we move on to the mission progress, and we score everything that's shown on the current progress token. Let's start with the lab. Now I have 2 cards in my lab, which means that I will score 2 points. The private sector has 6 cards in their lab, so that's 6 points for them. And the Russians have 5 cards in their lab, so they get 5 points. Now let's do the breakthrough scoring. The opponents can do an extra action before the breakthroughs are scored, and they can again move their astronauts from the launch pad into a zone when they would get extra points. So the Russians can tie the private sector and reaching for the star zone, so they move there, and the private sector, they already have points here. They cannot beat me in this sector. They already have points here, so they go in this zone, which means that they will dominate it, and I won't get any points because my astronaut is exhausted, and exhausted astronauts, those are the meeples that are lying down, they lose ties. Now to the actual scoring. My white meeples dominate one zone, and they are tied for domination in another zone, which means I get 8 points. The Russians are tied for domination in one zone, so that's 4 points for them. And the private sector is tied in 2 zones and dominate 1, so that's 12 points of progress. Finally, we open and close a project, which is done just like in the multiplayer rules, except when you close a project in the solo game, opponents automatically get points. Now, because I was able to complete this one, I could take some points away from them, so the Russians will only get 4 and the private sector only 2. So now we did everything that was on the progress tracker, so we can turn the token upside down. Then, just like in the normal multiplayer game, the initiative switches, and that's the end of the round, and the next round will start with funding again. And it was one round of the solo game, and we hope you enjoyed it.